Good evening. I'd like to call the meeting to order, and I would ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Mr. Byers? Ms. Cochran? Here. Ms. Falter? Here. Ms. Joseph? Here. Mr. Hilborn? Ms. Steinbeck? Here. Mayor Riggle?
Here.
Vice Chairman Bennington?
Here.
Chairwoman Santos?
Here. I have heard from both Jeremy and Jack, and I would like to entertain a motion to excuse them.
So moved. Second.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same sign. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the motion summary for the meeting held April 28th, as recorded and transcribed, and it was included in the email that it had your agenda with it. Are there any questions, comments, concerns, or corrections? I should ask for a motion to approve first.
So moved.
Thank you, Stephanie. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Kathy. Is there any discussion, corrections, additions, deletions to the minutes as transcribed? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
All those opposed, the same sign. Thank you. Darren, have we had any submissions from the public?
No, we have not.
Disappointed again. All right. The fourth item on the agenda is to review the drafts of proposals requested by the commission, and I believe Darren just passed those out to us.
I did, and I want to give myself a pat on the back so hard it's going to hurt my shoulder because I only printed it wrong one time, and I had it ready for the meeting. So we're almost done, and I've already finally got trained myself. So
Do you want to go through these for us, Darren?
I'd be happy to.
Thank you.
And just to confirm what these drafts are drafts of the changes we kind of talked about last time, and I said I'd come back. I always bring them back so we can look at them one more time. And when you kind of tell me it's okay, I'd move them over to a different sheet that has everything we've kind of checked off on, which we will then vote at the end. So for the salary of the mayor, rather than getting into this $120 thing, I just said shall receive additional compensation, which may be changed agreeably to the provisions of the charter. I guess we could probably say which will be set and changed, but I just figured it's better than putting $120 in there, which is kind of weird. Any thoughts on that one? Especially since you're the one.
$1 million would be just fine.
I'd be okay with that, but.
I second that.
Okay, so if there's nothing good there, I'll move that one along to the pass-through pile. Section 46, we thought it was kind of weird about the candidate being appointed city manager after the election. They lost, so I just struck that line out and started the sentence with the no, which you can't really tell it's bold, but that no was lowercase and now it's capitalized.
Everybody all right? That capture what we discussed? You can move that one too.
All right. 47, we tried to clean this one up. I don't think there was too much substantive change, but I think it might read a little better. So basically, the hearing will be begun and diligently proceeded between 7 and 35 days as set by council. So I just kind of reworded the words because it was like 35 and 7, and that kind of sounded out of order. Later on, I crossed out some of the language and tried to simplify it to say if the city manager submits a written statement in response within 2 weeks of his or her removal, if I see that, I got to clean this up, but the statement shall be included with the records relating to his removal. I didn't realize that I have it double there, so I'll clean that up. But basically, if they give us a statement, we'll put it in with the records, but we don't really have a journal and we don't require that, and we're not going to have council's not going to give a reason that says we're going to give a formal statement. So I just want to say, look, if he wants to submit something within 2 weeks, we'll put it in with the rest of the records.
Any comments, concerns, or questions on section 47?
Besides my typo I'll fix there. Okay. 50 is the most impactful change we've made as a commission. This is getting rid of the word but.
And there are several other buts that I have concerns.
You have more? Okay. Are we talking about records? So, what is the actual grammatical word for that? What's the violation there? Just out of curiosity.
Well, you just don't ever start a sentence with it.
It doesn't have like a hanging
No, it's not
thing?
hanging anything. but
Okay,
it's
cool.
Just, you don't start sentences with it.
So I've
Unless
taken
you're an
that out.
author.
It's just Mary Jane's rules, okay?
Mary
No, I
Jane.
think she's right. I just didn't know if it had like a cool
She is right.
name. So those are all the changes that we talked about last time. And I think if we're okay with those, I will fix the two little typo things there and I'll move them over to the to be approved at the end of the day stack. And I don't recommend necessarily we go yet to my section 70 and 71 because those are new. We haven't discussed them yet, and we can do
Okay.
that when we get through to that section.
Okay. Let's see. The next item on the agenda is review of Delaware City Charter Articles 15 to 20. And
Horrible at,
I actually wasn't, did we discuss Article 13? Administrative rates, purchasing unit, we did all that, right?
let me go back and confirm. Which one is 13?
Because your section 70
Right.
falls in where we discussed what was on our agenda to discuss last
Right.
month.
That's what I was gonna say.
But I don't
We-
know that we
we-
got through that.
I know we jumped ahead.
I know we
um,
have 74.
Yeah, 74, I just asked because I had already written it up, and I don't think we actually got to 77. At the end of the meeting, people had to leave, and we kind of said, okay, we're going to leave a couple sections early.
And my notes say that we left at Article 9, Department of Public Works.
Let's see.
Or 11,
Yeah, that's,
sorry.
I had that same mind.
11. So our agenda really actually should be Articles 11 through 20.
Works for me.
It's on page 15 of 30.
And that, I have a line there as well. So I guess we're all in agreements with that one. Yeah, I think what we did was we hadn't done those, but we jumped ahead to the 70.
54.
Yeah, just because we were trying to get there and we just couldn't quite get there. So this should go fast. So I would recommend, let's just start with Article 11.
All right. Article 11 is on the Department of Public Works, and Section 66 is the establishment and the appointment of director. We still have a Department of Public Works, don't we?
Yeah, it's a really good question because we've kind of changed names a couple of times, but I did call down to our Administrative Services Department and said, what are we calling it? And they said it is still Department of Public Works, although our director is Public Works Director and City Engineer, but that doesn't require a change.
Okay. Any other questions on that one? Article 67, duties of Director of Public Works. Any questions, comments, concerns?
To follow up on what you just said, Daryl, we have one person in two jobs. Is he
Yes.
being compensated for two jobs?
He's not getting double, but my understanding is when he went from City Engineer to City Engineer and Public Works Director, he was given an increase to account for the fact that he was doing an expanded role. That seems that.
It's not two different jobs, it's a little bit more involved in that. And not that it's somewhat related to your question, but this has come up at times over the years. We've created departments or not created departments. Ultimately, I guess it's a legal opinion from Darren, but what departments do we have? What constitutes a department? Is the city engineer a department? Is it just a position? Is it just responsibility that somebody does? And we get into these things more so in the last 10 or 15 years, the job titles get more lower, flowery, whatever else.
You should probably move to a microphone so we can record you, and some of these people don't know who you are.
Oh, I'm out.
Sorry.
So yeah, I will be less, while Dean's moving up. This is Dean Stelzer. I mentioned the last meeting that we're coming up on the finance section. And given the good questions that our members have had, I thought it'd be helpful if he came because I don't know enough about finance, but there's also some potential changes that we're thinking about. And I thought it'd be good to have Dean here for this meeting, and he was nice enough to come. So he's very important.
Because I've been around for 25 years, so my other title is becoming a staff historian. So I don't know who I'm taking over for, but that definition of what constitutes a department and how that relates to the charter and or what action council takes to create departments or not, I think there's been some of them that have been established by ordinance. So it's not technically a department, but you see through the charter, it talks about the Department of Public Works, the Department of Public Utilities, the Department of whatever. But Bill was, as Darren said, the city engineer. Now it's just the title he got. And just like in my department, I have an accountant. We weren't creative enough in coming up with the job title. He just does things. We have engineers, we have deputy engineers. We used to have assistant engineers, and then we called them deputy, and now we're calling them assistants again. But Bill became the public works director, and it was part of moving engineering back under the umbrella of the Department of Public Works. Ironically, I didn't bring it with me, but I brought some historical information. At some point, if you, as charter commission members, got a copy of the original city charter and then a 1967 version. And if there's some of the areas that you're contemplating changing, it might be interesting to see what originally the language was. But also included in there is there a charter, or is a chart of departments. And under Public Works is engineering as a function that Public Works performs. It technically used to not, at least how we operate, be under Public Works because we separated it because Public Works, Public Utilities, a different department, even by charter, doesn't have engineering as a function under there, and sometimes didn't always play very well together. So we separated. The engineer kind of operated on his own for a while in a separate building over there, but ultimately it got moved back with Public Works, and it helped because our former engineer, city chief engineer, Bill, became the Public Works director, and still the deputy engineer still reports. So, his title may be Public Works / city engineer / who knows whatever else, but technically he's the Public Works director, I think, pertaining to any charter or ordinances from that standpoint.
And Dean brings up a good point. I'll kind of clarify, or not clarify, add on to it. There are certain departments that are enumerated in the charter. Public Works is one, finance director, city attorney, that sort of thing. If you're interested, if you flip back to page 12, which is section 53, that does kind of talk about this issue generally. And basically, council's not allowed to abolish charter organized departments. So city council couldn't say we hate Public Works, they're gone tomorrow. However, council can establish through ordinances additional new departments aren't mentioned in the charter. So when Dean talks a little bit about engineer was kind of a new department, that's not mentioned in the charter, but they, through the org chart that they pass, they can establish it and then they can move it back and abolish it later. So that's kind of where there are certain charter ones that we can't mess with, and then there's other ones that are not quite as awesome that they can. So does that answer? That was a lot more probably than you wanted. Does that answer your question?
Sort of as I was looking through this, what I'm concerned about is it's grown like Topsy. It seems to me that it should be more clear. These are the departments. I don't know that the job description of the head of a department should be in the charter. It is in some places, it's not in others. I mean, it's council's duty, I think, to establish what departments are there. It's the city manager's duty, along with HR, to decide what they're going to do, right?
I totally agree.
Maybe not what the department does,
No, you're right.
but what the person does. So it just seems like that should be consistent.
I mean, frankly, and I don't know, Dean's a historian, he might have some insight on this, but to me, you have certain officers that are crucial that you can't mess with. City attorney, finance director, city manager, maybe purchasing person because there's a particular role, but these department issues that you bring up, I mean, I don't have an objection saying, well, departments are established by city council. I don't know why that has to be in the charter necessarily, because once it's in the charter, you can't mess with it. So like, let's say we didn't want to call it Public Works Department anymore. We really can't do that. So that is a point well taken. Dean, you're a historian. I don't know if you think it's how important it is to have some of those mentioned in the charter, but to me, I've always thought we should be able to do most of them by ordinance, not attorney, finance.
I think it makes sense to do it that way. What transitioned prior to when the city adopted charter back in 1951, effective in 1954, moving away from a more statutory type of city where you had the Public Works director. There was a Public Works Commission that Public Works director had certain authorities by state law to do certain things. And you had a safety director, and you didn't have a department of police. It was under the safety department, and that police chief, or if you had a fire chief, they reported to that safety director. And by state law, they had certain authorities that you didn't have a city manager. But blending that into a city manager form of government, they changed a lot of these. I think there's still a little spillover from things that were in place before that they weren't quite sure how that was going to play out. And then over the years, it never became an issue so much as far as how we function. One of the things with city form of government is that you do, manage and deal with things as they change. And thus you see some shifting of responsibilities. Engineering might have been in this given department. we're not that terribly departmentalized, with maybe the exception of police and fire. We pretty much work as a unit, and different people have different responsibilities at different times. So the notion of should it be more laid out, should it be consistent, is a good question, but my guess is that's why it's not so much. It's just that it just didn't really get cleaned up to the way we function currently. And what constitutes a department? What is it? Is it a department or a division? Does it make a difference? There's some times when into certain code sections that have been around for a while, just like in the utility billing. Well, the utility billing people actually taking care of the collecting and billing of utility bills falls under the finance department, and I'm responsible for. But there's many sections, I think, I don't know if in the charter, I didn't look at those, but certain code sections talk about the director of public utilities shall determine this, or shall determine whether this occurs, whether a utility customer can be exempted from this. Now, does that, provide them with that authority to do that? Not city council, not the city manager. I don't know. There's some of those things that are in there in various places that it doesn't become an operational issue, but it's there. Should it be cleaned up? I guess I don't know.
So
I'm sorry.
the one thing I would say, there's kind of two ways you can go, and I don't want to put words in anyone's mouth. You could go with the let's spell everything out in the charter, and you can go with the we don't need the stuff in the charter. Let's let council establish departments. I would recommend not trying to sit here and spell out all the current departments, because that's going to change, and we've organized 4 times since I've been here, and that would just be a hassle. But I don't think this would be a bad idea, and if that's something to make it simpler, if you gave me direction, I don't think we can hash it out today. I can go back within the next week and highlight all the sections that could maybe be taken out and replaced with a department shall be established by ordinance through city council, if that's what the commission wants me to look into doing.
Is there I'm sorry. Is there a table of organization someplace that we can see?
Organizational chart.
exists? Yes.
The current one?
Yeah, is there one? I mean,
Um,
not tonight, but if
Yes,
you make it available next week.
I think it's in our budget, but yeah, we can
Yeah,
print out a
even
copy.
if you looked online, if somebody wanted to, if they pulled up our 2016 budget, I think at the beginning
Okay.
there's probably, and that's every changes a little bit, not substantially, but there's
Yeah.
a little bit of shifting here and there.
Sure.
But yeah, Dean, I haven't looked at it. Do we have one that could be like I know it's in the budget, but is there one we could pull? I could just email it to them with their next packet, like a one pager that kind of has a general overall TO. I know we have individual departments that go deeper, but we have kind of an overall picture we could just pull out.
Yeah, we do, but I think Michelle creates it.
Okay, I will send that out with the next packet then. So, and maybe this is something where we're discussing now, but I send out the TO and we kind of continue talking about this
Next week.
next time, because it's kind of a big thing, but.
Yeah, I'm not really in favor of messing with it too much, but it'd be nice to see how you're organized these days. So.
Yeah, and in addition to getting that department chart, what I have a problem with in Public Works is I just don't really understand what it is. So if I go down to maintenance and conduct of facilities, it says that somebody's going to maintain and, the public parks. But when I go up here to Public Works, I'll just be honest, I have no idea what is in that grouping.
Because it says that the director of public works shall administer public works.
Yeah.
It's like they use the word, the definition they use, which is
Well,
another.
So-
thing.
And I'll throw another
Maybe it will
curveball
help.
at you.
Maybe
The
it will help
parks.
when we get the organizational chart, but
Yeah.
I would like us I don't want to go down to position by position, but I think we should add just
A
some
reference.
verbiage about what that is.
Or at least a point where you can reference this, the description can be referenced here.
Honestly, I think it makes more sense to allow council and the city manager and all of that by ordinance to establish departments.
I agree.
Here's what I think. We go on the ballot and say we're going to abolish the Department of Public Works. And you've got every voter going, what? And so I think that that's an uphill battle, not one that we shouldn't take on if we
Yeah.
believe firmly in it. But do think about that. I mean, that's what it's going to look like. Even though we will replace it with language that says, city council by ordinance will just establish departments as recommended or whatever. But still, the bottom line is people are going to say, what do you mean you're abolishing the Department of Public Works?
That's what's become problematic over the years with charter review commissions. It tends to just get to general because you try to clean, it's kind of like with union contracts, you try to clean up the language and you create a whole nother set of issues that weren't intended in how people perceive it. But I don't know, Darren, if there is a way to either add or to make it clear somewhere that some language that says there may be different departments referred to in this charter, but in essence, one change that says council shall by ordinance make amendments to the structure or whatever else, then it's clear that they can change that. It's just, every charter review commission, you're probably going to have the same issue come up.
Right. Well, that would we'd have to word that carefully so it doesn't give council the ability to change charter. So,
What I would, what are your folks' thoughts? I mean, I think I've heard some saying, I don't want to mess with it too much. I've heard some say, hey, it might be a good idea to pull some of this nonsense out and kind of make it a little bit more flexible. Do you guys have a sense yet, or you kind of?
I'd like to wait and see the organizational chart.
Yeah, I think I need the organization.
Because I'm willing to do two things. I can get the organizational chart, and assuming something bad doesn't happen to me next week, since we meet next Thursday, I don't mind going through and coming up with something so you can look at that too. And if you say you don't want to do it, I'm not going to be offended, but it might put a little more concrete.
I
on
think
what we'd be
that's a
doing.
good suggestion. Is everybody okay with that?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm okay with that, and I guess I would just point out that I think it's laid out fairly clearly in the Model Cities document.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have page numbers, but it's Article 4, departments, offices, and agencies. And it gives council the flexibility to run the city, which is what they have to do, without telling them how to do it.
I'm looking at section 53, which is, I guess, back on page 12 again, but and that section pretty much does allow council and the manager to describe what the departments do, and I kind of think that really addresses what we're talking about, perhaps. But
I think you're right, Dan. I think the weird thing is there's certain charter stuff that you can see like you need to have it, and there's some like public works where you're not even sure what it means. Like, do you need to have that be one of the departments that's in there that you have to do? I don't know. I can look at it and see. I think this section is very helpful. It might be already what we need to establish more departments.
seems like it to me, but
I'll take a look at it, come back with something, and I won't be offended if we scrap it and keep the way it is.
Okay.
I like kind of doing this kind of cleanup stuff. So I might have to go back with your permission and maybe tinker with 53 as well, since it'll be kind of a big package.
So look at all that time that saved us, right down to purchasing, right?
Yes. Especially if we get rid of stuff. Now I lost my track. So we went to.
We were at 67, so now we would be at Article 12,
Excellent.
which is Public Parks and Recreation, Section 68.
I would say probably this is going to be another one of those deals where I do whatever I do with the Public Works, and if we don't like what we maybe come up with, we can tinker with it, but we can probably skip it for now with the idea that it falls probably in line with the Public Works idea that do we really need to say that?
Although I think it's important to have in the charter that we are going to provide for the maintenance and conduct of public parks and public recreation. I don't think it's necessarily important for us to say that how it's going to be done, but I think we need to make it pretty clear that it's important, at least in my opinion, to make the council and the city responsible for taking care of the parks.
Well, the nice one about this one is, unlike Public Works, this just says council's going to do it according to whatever department they establish. So that actually does fit with what we were talking about before. So I'd maybe just leave that the way it is, unless there's a change you want to make to it.
Do you all agree that it's important that we at least make sure the city maintains parks? Else, who else's responsibility will it fall to?
The trouble is, in the recreation services, we no longer do those. We now farm that out.
What we maintain, we just don't do
Right.
recreation
Yeah.
services. Ironic, you talked about, this is the organizational chart back when the chart was originally developed, and it calls out for the same departments that you see currently in the charter, and only those exactly as it's written on that original organization chart. And that chart not just lists the department head position, it talks about the services that individual departments provide. And if you look at the current charter, even though that we've expanded roles all over the place, it just never changes in the charter. A couple years ago, we had the Public Utilities Group.
Yeah.
We had a director, and our Public Utilities Director and Public Works Director actually reported to that individual. You know, that may have been a change that council made, but I think it's one of those things, as Darren, as you said, it just has always stayed the same in the charter.
Well, I will just say to that, that it seems like, from the outside looking in, and never having run a city, that we either have to make clear in the charter that it's going to be done by council's appointed city manager or not, because it looks sometimes like it's done by person, and that shouldn't happen. We shouldn't make decisions based on people.
I agree. I'm not sure what your point is, though, Charlotte.
I just think
Lost
it's kind of gone like this, and it's because of this muddle.
Yes, yes, I see what you're saying.
And council, I don't even know how council would correct the city manager from playing, and I am not saying that he does, but he or she could play chess with people, and council wouldn't have much to say about that.
Actually, yeah, they'd have quite a
Having
bit. because
been
they have
an
to approve it.
executive director, the council's response to that is to get rid of the city manager.
Right.
If they, if they didn't like the way I was running the library, I would be very concerned if they went down to the micromanagement level, my board, and said, wait, you can't transfer that person, we don't like that.
Oh,
What
yeah,
they could say is, we don't like the way you're maintaining it, you're out of here.
I'm very familiar with that system.
They do have a little bit more flexibility too through the budget process, because remember, if even for these other ones, we're talking about setting the department by ordinance, if council doesn't want to do that, they can say, well, we're not going to approve that budget, or we're going
Right,
to,
that's true.
but
Even if-
it's not day to day, but annually.
Even if there's an appropriation, though, and the budget's approved, it also says that to create a position, that has to be approved, and the pay rate of that person has to be approved for city council. So they ultimately, could approve a budget, but yet not approve a position or whatever, or change.
Right. I don't know, I'm having fun this meeting. I don't know what it is, but this is we're high level stuff here.
Is everybody all right with Section 8, the way it's written, or do we want Darren to kind of play with it in light of our conversation? Because it really doesn't establish the department. It just says that, it's
Yeah, I
going
think
to be taken care of.
when I read 68 and 69, they don't really bother me as much, because they're just basically saying you got to take care of this somehow by ordinance, figure it out.
Well, it says such parks and recreation facilities shall be administered by such department as the city manager is determined. So they can kind of end it up anywhere, right?
Yeah, it could be, yeah, pretty much.
Make the fire department know if they want to.
I think they
I
do
just
mow
threw
their
that
own
out.
lawns.
Do not write new letters.
Charter review under fire. No pun intended.
Are we okay with 68 then? Okay, Article 13 is public utilities. The language in 69 and 68 to me are identical with the changes of the obvious changes. Any questions on 69? Article 14 is purchasing and inventory.
And take a chance to read 70 and 71. This is, I've taken liberty in my review of kind of trying to clean this up before we talk. And that's going to be on the back page of what I've provided. I'll give you a little background. We do have a purchasing agent. Assistant City Manager Jacqueline Walker fills that role for us. However, this must have been written back in the day when you had a room which had all the pens in the city in it, and that person had a key to it. And it just doesn't work that way anymore. So we do have procedures and policies that, and that person Jackie doesn't buy everything. She's kind of in charge of everything, but there is authority for other people to buy things in a certain amounts, and there's other checkoffs. So I kind of try to make it more, hey, we're going to have policies and procedures that are approved, and there is still a purchasing agent who's kind of in charge of that, but it's not as, they're in charge of all the storerooms and warehouses and things of that. So I tried to clean that up, but that's just my idea to make it more reality-based.
And that ability to purchase is done through budgeting, correct?
There's a budget that says what, but it doesn't go down to you're buy 6 pencils this year or 20 erasers, but you have to do it within your budget confines.
Your line item numbers.
Yeah.
Got it.
And the reason I changed done to approved is I think they pretty much post these, Lee, the way it works, posts the things on our website, and I think Jackie might see it, but I don't think she's actually doing the advertising anymore. So I think it's important to have the purchasing agent kind of know that the ad process is going appropriately to make sure we're doing it right, but I don't think that person necessarily is going to be the one putting the ad out there.
Any comments, questions, concerns, confusion?
And I just hit you with this, so I'll bring it back next time, but rather than go back and then come back again with brand new stuff, I figured I'd share it with you now.
Yeah, on the surface, it seems fine, but I'd like to take a little bit more time to read through it.
And to be perfectly honest, I probably should get some input from the person currently doing it, which is Jackie, because she wasn't able to look at it when I finished it, so she might tell me I'm crazy.
I think Darren's accurate. This is another one of those throwbacks. There were a lot, and there are a few still, where cities even the size of Delaware back then had a purchasing agent. And Public Works Department didn't buy asphalts, they didn't buy nails, they didn't buy shovels. It all went through the purchasing department. And actually, when we hired Jackie's position, we wanted to do a bit more purchasing, but centralized purchasing, but more bigger bids. We still, as an organization, all of our purchasing primarily is decentralized at the department level. The police department buy their ammunition, they buy their whatever else, and that all occurs according to our budgets and all that sort of stuff. But we don't have a formal centralized purchasing process, but for making sure that, and there's a section here that talks about competitive bidding, that we comply with Ohio Revised Code and provisions in here. We do formally bid that, and there's a little bit of oversight from Jackie on those type of activities.
And I think we also have some regulations as to if it's under this amount, you can do this. If it's more than this, you have to do that sort of stuff. So just trying to clean up a little bit. So we'll bring these
We'll
back.
come back to 70 and 71, I think probably the same.
Yeah, it's same thing.
Is therefore spelled correctly?
I don't think so.
Wait, did I do that?
It should be an EM.
And EM.
Oh, I didn't do that. That was already there, but I will fix it. I mean, that was already there. I will fix it.
It's in other places that way in the charter.
You know what? I think actually that therefore might be okay, because it's not therefore you do this. It's literally therefore. So I think it actually might be okay.
Legal language. Dan understands it.
What's that?
I can't even find out where you're talking
Dan.
about.
I'm going to put Mary Jane in charge of figuring that out.
Oh,
Yeah, she should know.
I'm good at that.
yeah, I think it's okay.
I know you are.
Dan says it's okay, it's okay.
His
And
word
Dan
is
says it.
his word is gold by mine.
That's all right. We'll come back to
Oh.
70 and 71 next week and let Darren have a chance to talk to Jackie and make sure that it's all fine and makes sense. And Darren isn't crazy.
Half crazy.
Section 72 is inventory of city property. That seems pretty straightforward. Any comments or questions on that? Article 15 is contracts. Section 73 is competitive bidding. Darren, have there been changes that have to be made because the RSC changed?
The biggest thing that I don't think this one needs to be changed. The change I recommended before about the lowest and best and not,
74.
that's the change, and that's a permissible way of doing your competitive bidding. But I don't think there's been really a lot of change in when you have to do competitive bidding.
Okay. Anything in 73 that popped out at you that we might want to discuss? There's a threshold established, is there not?
There is. I'll give you a little bit more background than you ever want to know. So the state has a threshold for when you have to do competitive selection, and you don't have to do it for $250 because it's an expensive process. The state did change their process, and this actually refers to the state law, so that's
Right.
good. The weird thing about what the state did was they established two different numbers, and one number was if you were some sort of certified procurement specialist through some place, and then there was a lower number that was raised for people who just weren't. But then they sunset that or delayed it because nobody had that certification yet. So it was like, well, until this certain other date that isn't happening yet, everyone can do this. So it got really weird. So we passed an ordinance that said if there are two state thresholds, the city will adopt the higher one. So we're using our ordinance to match our charter, which doesn't say we can't do that. So we are in line with that.
All right.
Mary Jane, I just had a question, and maybe how the charter members read it, and some others, including Dan. But if you look at the last sentence of that section, and he or she shall report every contract, agreement, or obligation so entered into to council at its next meeting, together with a statement of the reasons and circumstances therefore. think that's somehow at times been interpreted to mean that Tom, through the agenda, reports all contracts and agreements the city enters into. But as I read this again today, I think it's referring to the middle of that paragraph where it says, but notwithstanding the foregoing provisions of this section, the city manager may, in cases of disaster or emergency, determine that immediate action is necessary to preserve the public property, health, safety, blah, 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 blah. And those need to be reported to city council with a reason why it was an emergency or whatever else.
And that's how I interpret. I actually had the same. I was reading that like, that's weird. We don't do that. But I interpret it as it has to be those emergency things. If you're going to go and get out of competitive selection, you need to tell council because it's kind of outside the scope. So if that question was raised for other people's minds, I would be encouraged to go through and fix this because I actually thought, is it worth me saying emergency contracts have to be reported to council as opposed to this therefore such thing? But what did you guys think when you read it?
I think it's the emergencies.
I did not think it was the emergencies.
Oh, there you go. So we got cleared it up. Okay, that's good. I mean, not good.
What happens now that he doesn't report? All the
Well, I don't think
contracts?
anybody pays any attention, but Jane probably remembers, as part of the packet, there's the last couple pages, contracts and agreements entered into. It could be for buying pencils. I don't know that it's done completely, but I don't know that that's really, when you read this, I was always wondering why that's done. I thought it was a charter provision, but as I read this, I don't think it says every contract that the city enters into. But, there may be some public purpose to say, yes, report every contract and agreement, regardless about if it was an emergency or not. So I don't know. If you read, I think if most people independent would read it, they'd say, oh, yeah, that's referring to those emergency situations. But maybe
So
not.
what does Tom do now?
Well, it just kind of gets reported with the agendas.
Just he reports all the contracts.
Yeah, we don't have that many emergency agreements we enter into, if any at all.
Yeah, but he also reports the non-emergency agreements too.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm not sure that's not a bad thing. That's a lot.
Well, that's what I
That's
said.
transparency. I think
Could
that's
be.
a good thing
Right.
to put that in there and let the public know who's getting awarded contracts and so on and so forth. But I read this one that he would specifically have to report those done in case of emergency.
Sure.
I thought that too because it also said together with a statement of the reasons and circumstances, which, I mean, I don't know if we would do that for pencils. I guess you could, but I could go either way. I could leave it the same and let, bygones be bygones, let it keep going the way it's working. I always like cleaning up when we can, but I don't know what the thoughts of the commission are.
If it's being done by practice, maybe the way this is worded is ambiguous enough to let it go.
Fine with me.
I have another topic, though, I think fits in there. We have, in my knowledge, never in the city of Delaware had a local preference clause.
We do not have one now. I know that.
And I guess I would put that out there for consideration. I mean, we can limit it. You can limit it by percentage. You can limit it by dollar amount. But I know that there are times when goods can be bought from a vendor or a small business in the city, but they don't always meet the lowest and best. But I looked at a couple of them around the state, and they tend to go from 3 to 5%, and they're capped 10,000, 20,000. I just throw that out there for consideration. I think it's a viable addition. I'm sure it's not one the city would be really pleased to have because it's not easy, but.
Well, I think when you say city, I don't think city people, especially city employees, would have a problem. The city, meaning city citizens, would be okay with it. Paying a premium would be a different issue. We have had in policies of sorts, certainly never anything quantified, either by ordinance or certainly not in the charter, but it certainly is one of those issues that it becomes more ambiguous. I think speaking from city staff people, they like to see where it's clear that there isn't. They don't like get caught in between. Some maybe do, some maybe don't. It's come up on several occasions, and when it has, we've typically brought it to city council at times, and they've weighed in, but it kind of gets to be a tough thing. I can say it will be, not whether the cities that you saw examples of, whether it was actually in their charter or in their ordinance. I'd probably say it's probably better to put it in an ordinance. That's where it is, at least part of law. But it's a little easier to amend because even if you come up with a good draft and what you think, how it should be worded, I guarantee it's one of those that over people want to tweak it and work with it. But certainly it's something to consider.
Well,
Yeah.
that makes sense to me that it would be an ordinance, not a, something that becomes your.
Yeah, and I can tell you if you want to keep that ball rolling and outside of this hall, I used to work for DAS and they were in charge of all the purchasing and they had preference programs for different minority and owned businesses. They had ones for local states, to include border states, because then they would retaliate against them. And then they also had ones for certain groups, disabled or challenged individuals. They gave preferences for. So they have lots of programs. We can do one. It's just, I think Dean's right. It's probably easiest to have council vote on it because then they can have a policy debate and then we could always tweak it if it's not working or it's blowing up our budget. But I think it's something we could continue to work on. I have enough experience to help with that. So.
Okay, well, thank you. I think that makes sense.
Thanks for bringing that up. I've lost where we are.
We decided that we like the ambiguity
Oh,
of
we're okay with
73.
73. I like the ambiguity. And I know you lawyer people like ambiguity.
Keeps us in business. We already did 74.
Right, and you had that from last week, and so you will,
I moved 74 since we already talked about it into the it's good
it's done, okay,
document. It'll come back for our final vote, yeah.
all right. 75 is the authority to make contracts and agreements. Any substantive, I have some grammatical, as in the buts. Get rid of the buts.
You want to get rid of butts?
So right
For you.
smack dab in the middle of the paragraph. Isn't it?
For
But I don't know
you,
why they're there. It just said council shall have no power. Why do you need the but? You don't even need that. It's silly.
but that's there's two of them in this one too.
That's right. Was there any substantive, anything there in substantively that we should be looking at or discussing? Dean, anything here that you felt should be of our concern? All right, 75, Article 16. Section 76, Budget Message Ordinance, Form and Content of Budget. I know that the dates are important to be in here because that keeps you on track to have the budget approved by the end of the year. So why normally I would say, why are we putting dates? These seem to be pretty critical.
Dean, I know there was some discussion whether we wanted to move it. Was it earlier?
Make
or
it earlier?
Was that what we were discussing? I mean, we don't need to have
I
the old
think,
charter.
I think Tom's had some concerns more recently just with the time involved and as it pertains to budgets, every year. But as I've shared with him, November 15th, there's nothing in there. It says on or before that precludes you from doing it sooner. None of his discussions was push it back further. And so I just remind him, I don't think you need to change the charter. The on or before November 15th has never been problematic. And I tend to agree with Mary Jane. You don't have that date in there, it always seems to get pushed back and then, well, maybe around there. But if it ends up being, and we haven't had any problems for a long time.
So if Tom wanted to submit it in August,
Yeah, you
could.
Right, it
We
says on or
just can't do
before.
it after November 15th.
Right.
And we can't move it back anyway because you got to have enough reading,
Right.
hearings and stuff. So
So I have a question. And then the very first sentence, it says that there is going to be a comprehensive annual appropriation budget and a budget message. I have no idea what a budget message is. Is that a document? Is
it's
that?
It's sort of
basically
a narrative.
it's like a little message from the city manager saying, hey, here's what we did in our
Cliff
budget.
notes of the budget, so that somebody without looking at all the pages of numbers could get a general idea.
Okay.
Talks more about policies and maybe projects and services. Whereas our budget, if you read the rest of that section, it talks about by object, which is capital outlay, materials and supplies, contractual service. That didn't tell you what they're actually doing. It tells you that you're buying cement, but who knows what you're doing with it. So the
Okay.
budget message is.
All right, so it is a document.
Yeah.
It's usually like the first few pages of the budget, to be honest. It's like a couple, 6 pages.
I just found it intriguing that it was called out. Like, it seems to me that that would be part and parcel of the budget.
You'd think you would want to do one even if it wasn't in the charter too, like,
Yeah.
I was going to double a bunch of numbers on you and walk away, see you, but yeah. Good question though.
Any other questions or comments? I had, you know me and my grammar.
There's no more
It
but.
says indicating and explaining contemplated increased or decreased. I didn't quite get that. Sentence didn't make a lot of sense. Is it contemplated increases or decreases?
I need to find it. How far down is
that,
that?
or where's that?
On the fourth line from the bottom.
Found it.
It didn't quite make sense to me as past tense, but I might not be reading it correctly.
I'm going to guess that it probably was supposed to be increased or decreased, either line items or budget or whatever. Yeah, I mean, that's not grammatically.
It reads to me like
Did
it
it
should
make
be
no sense to anybody
increases
else?
or decreases.
It seems like it should be increases or decreases.
I agree. If you go back to the beginning of the sentence, which is practically unfindable,
Yeah.
10 lines before that, it does read like it should say increases or decreases.
I have no problem making that change.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments,
Well,
concerns?
The only thing I just read it
Excuse me.
again, that contemplated, only to clarify that, explaining increased or decrease, I think gets back to the fact that it's a budget with anticipated expenditures and revenues, and I think that's probably what they mean by contemplated. That's what we expect to occur. Now, obviously there's an ordinance that's adopted that puts a ceiling on what can be spent, but
Dean, I think it's missing like a noun to keep it.
Something weird
If it
in
was
that.
increased or decreased line items or some word that talks about what is being increased or
I
decreased.
mean, okay, I was looking more at the word
Amounts or something.
explaining contemplated increases or decreases, if it was instead of increased or decreased.
Yeah, they're just saying put S's there.
Okay.
And I think that reads better. Does that mess up anything what you do, Dean?
No, I thought you were going to eliminate the contemplated.
No, we're leaving contemplated in there.
Okay. Sorry.
No, you're good.
All right, section 77 talks about the hearings and the copies of the budget. The only comment I had on here is that should we acknowledge that it can be done electronically?
I would love that.
Because it does say that copies of such annual appropriation budget and message shall be provided. And I didn't know if that we wanted to say you could, in the
Well, so-
interest of saving a tree.
Save a lot of trees.
Every time I said that when I was on council, you remember, Dean, when Steve Cockler was here? He'd say, as somebody who comes from Southeast Ohio who makes their living on cutting down trees,
Yeah.
but in the interest of saving trees.
Yes, I think that's a good change. It's consistent with the ones we've made before. And I don't think anyone will object to it. Dean, you've been here longer than I have, but in the 5 budgets I've done, I don't think we've had anyone come in here and ask us for that paper copy.
Well, it would be easy just to point them to a link on the
Yeah,
website
and we can print it
somewhere.
out for them if they want it, but,
Right.
okay, that's a good one. I'll make that change.
Is there anything else anybody saw in section number 77?
No.
Fine. Section 78. Appropriation ordinance, temporary and annual. This is mostly what it says, as far as I understand appropriations. The budget says, this is the money we're going to spend on these line items, and then the appropriation says, now you have the authority to spend it.
In a roundabout way, that's what an appropriation is, an official legal amount that you're going to spend. But in essence, what this is the balanced budget amendment, whatever you would refer to it, that people talk about with the federal government, that they don't have a balanced budget requirement. The state does, and the cities. But we struggle, and I think even when Mary Jane was on council, with defining what a balanced budget represents. And the charter is pretty clear, although some of our council members, including Andy at times, that middle sentence that says the total appropriations made by such ordinance from any fund shall not exceed the total resources of such fund for such year as determined by official estimates. Doesn't really talk about what's an official estimate versus a budget. We're required by the Ohio Revised Code to submit official estimated revenues to the county budget commission, which is the county auditor, the county treasurer, and the county prosecutor, whereby we have, as a governmental entity, we have many, many, many different funds that we have to track expenditures for different, whether it be a grant or whether some revenue source is designated for a specific purpose. We have to set up a fund. If we get a grant for $100,000 to put a sidewalk somewhere, the requirements may say we got to set that up in a separate fund, show that revenue there and any expenditures. But we have to submit to the county budget commission, and we have to do it September, so it's in advance of our budget process. And usually it's the finance, or what our estimate of revenues are for the next ensuing year. So we send them this list that says we expect to have $55 million in revenue in all these different funds for 2017. They turn around and they send that back and say, that's your official. They look at it. I don't know how they can do much to figure it out, but they say that's your official estimate. So that then gets added to at the end of the year. Those are the expected revenues. Obviously, we don't know, and we won't know until we get to the end of that next year, but that gets added to the money we have left over at the end of the year, which is unappropriated, meaning it's not encumbered by some commitment we've made, our unencumbered fund balances. So if we have in our general fund, which is our primary operating fund, if there's $2 million in there for whatever reason, for call it rainy day or whatever else, but if there's $2 million in there that isn't committed to any function, and we've estimated that our next year's revenues in the general fund are going to be $22 million, then this says that we cannot, council can't approve appropriations that exceed the $20 million in estimated revenues plus the $2 million in carryover. So it can't exceed $22 million. Now, at the end of the year, we have to amend our official certificate with the actual numbers for year-end carryover balances, and we still have estimated revenues. County Budget Commission sends a certificate back saying we certify, along with our budget ordinance. They compare the two, and they make sure that our budget ordinance does not exceed any of those estimated revenues and carryover balances. They send us back a certificate saying you're in compliance. That's kind of what that's communicating in a roundabout way. But I only bring up the budget, the balanced budget, because many, many, many times council looks at the budget, balanced budget to be $20 million in revenue is what you're projecting. Don't budget more than 20 million, regardless of what your carryover balance is. But that's not what that said. You know, you're supposed to include that, but anyways, we get by.
Okay, they get by, we can move on.
Say again?
They get by, we can move on.
You know, but you think about that. And just think about it on your own personal level. You know, I get my pension check at the beginning of the month. Well, if I'm lucky, I have stuff left over from the previous month. So that means I have more to spend in that month than I had the previous month. It's still my revenue. So I get what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
But I get it.
Whether the over from an
You get
ongoing
Yeah.
You have anything left over at the end of the month?
Not much. I'm trying to spend it all.
from a going concern standpoint, you want to be careful that you're not, because you know that next ensuing year you may not have much of a carryover balance. You can't commit to continual expenses. You can't go hire another 25
Right.
fire or police officers because next year you may not have that. So that makes sense to look at, which we obviously do. But there are also timing issues, and many times it comes up where something that was intended to occur in 2015, for whatever reason, it couldn't move forward. So we had to move that into 2000. The money's there to do it in 2000. That gets carried over. But then when you have to reappropriate it, it gets added in. Now you're out of balance because you're not showing a revenue. And it causes some issues at times with council. But like I said, we usually are able to explain them. But this is where this kind of mirrors Ohio Revised Code. And it provides some means to make sure that cities and governmental entities don't spend more money than they got coming in.
Darn.
So technically, how would the city of Delaware access the rainy day funds?
Well, council can change budgets and all that sort of stuff. As far as the county budget commission, that money's there. But if council elects not to appropriate it all because they want to set some of it aside, that doesn't mean they can't turn around and appropriate it and do a supplemental
So
budget.
we're not saying that the official estimates here are the revenue numbers you report to the county.
They are, I mean, it doesn't say it in that language, but in essence, that's the same purpose
Okay.
of those official estimates.
Okay.
Because anybody going into any business, if I'm looking at 2017 or whatever year, well, how am I going to put a budget? I don't know how much money I'm going to have. Well, you got to estimate it. And obviously use that as a basis, and then the revised code requires us, if I, for whatever reason, thought we were going to get, back in the day when we got inheritance tax, and sometimes they would be big, up and down. If I estimated we were going to get $1 million in inheritance tax revenue in the next year, and, more than 2/3 of the way through the year, we've only gotten $100, we're supposed to amend our estimated certificate and reduce it. But, it's kind of the old school, way back when, making sure that we don't spend more money than what we have. We have many, 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 many more sophisticated ways to keep track of cash flow and issues and things like that. But, it's still the language and it still provides a base level of oversight to make sure that we don't appropriate more money than we have or will have in the future.
Okay, so you don't need any change to
No,
this section?
I just, if you read it, I'm not so sure you're going to understand what it says.
Well, it's all good.
Kathy?
Oh, that was
Thanks, Kathy.
I'm an old accountant too, so.
Okay, then we're good with section 78.
Let's go.
All right, Article 17, capital improvement budget and programs.
I think there's another one where there may be a date change, but I don't know if we need it because it says on or before. Dean, there was no talk about moving that backwards, right? Or was there?
No, not necessarily. Once we, move it up. So
So we can do that without having it.
yeah, then it change. And again, I'll promise not to say too much because it'll take you longer. There is a difference between a capital plan and a capital, which is the next section, the capital, the capital budget. But if you have questions, maybe I'll wait and see if you have any questions.
Anybody have any questions about the capital program, section 79?
No.
No.
All right. How
I
about
think-
section 80?
This isn't a question, this is the question
Okay.
I have from a clarity standpoint, again, only to bring it up.
Mhm.
If you look at section 79, it says that the capital, city manager shall prepare a 5-year capital improvement program. Capital shall include the following. Our capital improvement documents don't include all that.
Oh, they don't?
And quite frankly, when I came here, our capital improvement plan was on one sheet of paper that said, we'll maybe spend $800,000 doing things as we determine later. There's reasons I think it's helpful to kind of have that information, but my question is, if you read the sentence underneath 1, 2, 3, and 4, it says, the above information shall be in such form as determined by the city manager, shall be revised and extended each year with regard. Does that sentence in and of itself say that city manager, we can change pretty much the format?
You can change the format, but the way it's worded right now, and I don't want to comment on what's being done, but those 4 things are supposed to be in there. So A, we don't do that, and B, we don't think we need to do that. We want to leave that up to the city manager. We probably want to try to strike those, so it gives them the flexibility to include them if that's what the council wants, or not if they don't. I don't know which ones are in there and which one aren't, Dean.
Well, the most problematic one is number 4, the estimated annual cost of operating, maintaining facilities to be constructed, acquired, or developed. That's as we operate. There's nothing in our capital plan that talks about that, and that's why I'm asking: is that those 1, 2, 3, and 4 must be in there, or does that next sentence say the form that those take?
Why is number 4 not available? So because it says now if you have a cost estimate, your available funds, your method of financing, why wouldn't we
Because
be
the
able?
capital program only deals with the bricks and mortar of building it. It doesn't talk about the operating part. And what number 4 says, if that correct me if I'm wrong, Dean, but the capital program only should be talking about how much it costs to build it. The operation of it should be in the general budget or not in the capital budget.
I think you're correct in the sense of an appropriation, but again, this is a plan. This isn't an appropriation. In the plan, one would think it makes sense if you're going to budget money and you have capital money to build a $35 billion school. I'd like to think, along with that deliberation, that you also should be able to maintain it too.
Yeah,
So,
that's
but
what I'm
it-
thinking. If you build a
it's
building,
not
you
a
still
budget,
have to
so
be able to pay the electric
The
bill.
concept makes sense, and I'm not saying that it's not taken into consideration. Obviously, if we're going to, and our capital improvements run the gamut of a sewer line. That sewer line could be put in there in 50 years, we may not have to do anything to it.
Right.
So sometimes it's not always so easy, but obviously, we're not going to go build a new park or a new spray park without having discussion about what it's going to take to maintain that. But does it formally, in what form? Because I can think in my own mind, I think conceptually, and we do, but how do we quantify that? Is that a mandate? That's my question. Is this that in fact it's in a charter and some sort of mandate that we perhaps need to add something to, even if it just says estimated annual cost of operating is unknown at this time, or maybe it
Yeah,
might
just
be.
asking for an estimate.
Right.
So.
I would add it. I think the way it's written right now, I would add it, and maybe we don't have a lot of information, but it's going to cost people and maybe fixing every 10 years or something. I don't know. I mean,
I don't know, it just seems to me to be a, kind of a required thing. You really wouldn't go expend capital if you didn't really have a good handle on what the ongoing costs were going to be, which was back to your point earlier, Dean, when you said using the rainy day fund for ongoing kind of things. You really wouldn't build something if you couldn't keep it maintained.
But, and I think that's commonsensical, and that occurs. I guess the question is do we need to put it in a charter so the bureaucrats who work for the city don't ever forget that? And that's where a lot of these things, I mean, you could have a charter that's, 350 pages long with putting in there issues. Now, at some point in time, when you look at not just this, but even for the annual appropriation ordinance, I haven't done that yet, it kind of says that the document shall have this, and this. And to me, it's not just whether we are doing that. It also can be, and that's why it might be in there, is that the public too, this whole transparency thing, not that they don't think we don't take that into consideration, but they want to read about that and know that you're doing it because they can read it in that capital improvement plan that they've done that. So, as I said, it's kind of one of those issues. We tend to do what we plan for things and do all that sort of stuff. How important, how specific is it? And that's why I was more curious with your opinions as opposed to the legal opinion. What form does that take? Because you're representing citizens. It may be from a staff standpoint, yeah, we do that. That's what we need to do. But from a citizen perspective, yeah, you should make that a part of your document, because if I ever elect, and we talked about people coming, when we have the public hearings, probably count on one hand the number of people that actually came to our budget deliberations, but that's not to say somebody wouldn't want to. And if they do, or if they just want to look at the document and not come to a meeting,
Well, that's what I do.
Can they
I
get the
look at
information?
documents. I might not be able to attend the meeting, but on a number of occasions, I look at the documentation. And if it's not there, I will go and follow up and say, where is this? I want to see the document for that. Because, and maybe that's, maybe that's because that's what my career is finding documentation and proving that it needs to be there.
Mhm.
But it would be my expectation that it would be there. As a citizen, I mean, I would expect it to be there. Because if it's not, but I'm also a millennial in that I expect transparency. If it's not there, if it's not included, I'm going to assume that it's not done.
well,
I
that
don't
brings
think
up
it does any harm.
Yes.
And I think that leaving it in the charter is a good reminder to people putting the capital improvement budget together, the capital program together, that you do need to be mindful of how much it's going to cost if it's an ongoing cost.
Well, it also has the negative thing where if we take it out, they're going to say, wait, why are you taking it?
Yeah,
I mean, even if-
Yeah, I don't take it out, but you have to realize it's a 5-year
that's right.
plan. The 5th year out is going to be maybe even a little pie in the sky, and who knows what's going to happen. And that first year out is the one that gets the most attention probably, and
Right,
because you're going to enact that during the course of that year. But
right.
so it's going to vary depending on how far out it is. And
Well, and you can see the estimates change year after
Sure.
year. So as year 5 moves into 4 and 3 and 2
Right.
and 1, if the project even stays there, because the project could fall away.
sure.
But I actually like it.
Yeah.
And this is really, it says which are proposed to be undertaken. So this is only, like you said, what we hope to do, not what we're going to do. So are we okay with leaving number 4 the way it's
And
written?
like I said, I wasn't suggesting taking it out, but it's just, that clarity, how people read, because that next sentence kind of almost reads, maybe to me, that the above information, which is what's above it, 1, 2, 3, and 4, shall be in such form as determined by the city manager. It kind of calls for that, but then if I read it, it kind of says, well, the city manager is determined what form it takes. But
My way of thinking, when I read that, I thought, well, it doesn't have to be number 1, number 2.
That's exactly what I
Number
thought.
3, he could put it in a big old narrative, one
If he
big old
wants to do it
paragraph if he
bullet
wants to,
points versus
but that
numbers.
information still has to be there.
Yes,
That's the way I read it.
Cool. All right, what's next? 80?
Sorry? 80.
80? I didn't mean to usurp your role.
No, please do, we're up to 80.
Okay.
Action by council on capital improvement program. This actually is saying that once this has been approved, then council has to say, okay, got to do whatever to fund it, figure out what we're going to do and so forth. was pretty straightforward. Any questions on that one?
No changes.
No changes, fabulous. Section 81, presentation of annual capital budget.
You're laying it before you.
Yeah, but that's already been said. That will lay it before. That got said back here.
I just think it's kind of
Laying
funny.
that.
I think it's not submitting it. Yeah, it's funny.
Yeah, he was laying that in front of council 2 pages ago.
That just cracked me up, though.
76, in 76.
Did you say it there too? Oh, you're right. No, we're not taking it out. It's funny.
Are we okay with that? Do we like lay upon, gonna lay it on?
Lay it on them.
Lay it on me, baby.
Yeah, it's like, here you go.
Section 82 is the adoption of the annual capital improvement budget.
I don't think we've ever had a problem hitting our public hearings to make that happen.
No changes.
It's not me, mine's in the car, dead. All right, are we okay with 82?
Yes, yes.
All right, so we're up to Article 18. And this is the Finance Director. And,
Does the date need to stay in there?
No.
sorry, what?
The date, effective January 1st, 1985.
You have to speak up, you're talking to my deaf ear.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It has the date like 85 in there, and that doesn't really have to be there. I don't know how it was picked before.
No, it was because
Oh.
prior to that, it didn't function that way. The director of finance was appointed by city council.
Oh,
So it
okay.
probably just never was one of those things.
Switch it, never clean it up.
Changed, but it never got changed back. Or never, the date never came out.
So we don't need that?
I'll take the date out. I like
Thank
doing
you.
that.
Is that your favorite?
It's like the easiest change to make. I just hate these weird dates, like the 1920 one we had in there or whatever.
Everything else okay in 83?
Yes.
84. I had a question about 84. It says that if he shall accept appointment by city manager to another office, then the office is vacated. What about if he quits? What about if he leaves? I mean, this just is saying that the vacancy can
Well, I think what
occur.
they're saying is he can't hold 2 offices.
Like the city
So he couldn't be
engineer.
like the
Oh.
city engineer and the public works director.
There are 2
Yeah.
people who can't do that. Right
Gotcha.
now, it's legal, city attorney and city finance.
Oh, then that makes a heck of a lot more sense.
If anything, the title of that section could be different, because if that's all it's saying is he can't hold 2 offices, vacancy is really probably not,
Yeah.
it's really not speaking to vacancy, it's speaking
Yeah,
to-
it really is not a vacancy.
Right.
So I just have a question from a practicality standpoint. Have we adhered to this?
I don't know, Dee's been there for 25 years. We haven't done anything in 25 years.
Never held
Has
another
there been
No,
position.
wait a
any, has
minute.
there been any
Dean was acting city
consolidation? like-
manager.
He was acting city manager for a while.
There was a change, I think it was a charter change
Yeah.
many years ago that enabled, because it used to say that the finance director couldn't be acting city manager.
And I think it's in here.
There is
And that
allowed.
changed, but this, again, you get into slicing things up as far as what a position, there's been many, not so much recently, but many years ago, it would be the acting parks director because there was a vacancy. So finance director, but I was filling a role. Now, if it would have been technically, no, I'm not technically the parks director, but functioning to help me, do some of that sort of stuff. But I wasn't appointed to the parks director position, so. I don't
Dean, do
think
you
it
know
was-
why that is? I mean, is it just because you're so cool, you can't do other stuff? Because
No, I think it still goes back to what, even above that, when if you looked at that org chart it passed around, the finance director was appointed by city council, not by the city manager. So there was that intent to still up through 1985. still
I think
separate
it's an
that.
independence thing.
Right.
So
And
You don't
if
want your
you're-
finance
you're independent.
manager or director
Spending
over
money in
public
a
works,
department.
Right.
spending money and being able to have too much authority.
Conflict of interest or checks and balances.
Yeah.
I'll change the title, come up with something
Yeah,
snappy.
vacancy makes no sense.
Agreed.
Well,
Concurrent
and-
appointment.
And I
something
don't really
like
understand what appointment means either, especially now if,
We changed the department.
well, or if we've allowed the finance director to be an acting something or
But
other.
that's different than being appointed.
Right.
That's filling a vacancy so the department can continue to operate until that person is replaced. I understand that because somebody's got to do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I'm just wondering if we should,
Want me to play with it?
No.
No? I like your answer. Okay.
Maybe I'm picking my battles.
It doesn't bother me to at least bring stuff back to you, but
I just don't, I agree with Stephanie. I just don't like the word vacancy because it really, that's not really what they're saying. And then and 85, we have are we okay with 84? 85 is the acting director of finance.
In a way, that's kind of the opposite too of what you're saying about
Right.
segregation of duties, because, you know, you want the finance director to be the public works director, but you could have the public works director being the finance director. I don't know which one's worse, but if he also can approve his own purchases.
Well, it says though that he can only designate officer or employee in the Department of Finance.
Or some suitable person.
Oh.
Hey, if you,
Define suitable.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
really helpful. Thanks, Charter.
There are comma issues in this one. In the second, I'm just changing the subject, sorry. In the second line, it should be suitable person who, comma, during the absence or disability of, or during a vacancy in the office of the Director of Finance, comma, shall on a temporary basis exercise.
I can make
She's
that.
right.
So who, comma, during the absence, the second comma goes away,
Yes.
or the existing comma goes away after of,
Mhm.
and then we're,
Actually, it doesn't hurt anything to leave it there, but you can take it out if you want.
and
Unless
then,
it,
and then where does it go back? You had another comma.
The third line after the second word finance, before shall.
Thank you. The Office Director of Finance, comma, shall.
Any other questions with 85? All right, 86, duties generally of director.
in one of the all-time great titles in the charter, duties generally.
Kind of general idea of what he does, generally.
Yeah, I don't know why generally is there.
What about general duties of director?
Yeah.
What about just duties of director?
Duties of
Yeah.
director.
Duties of finance director.
I would put finance in there.
Duties of the general director.
5-star general. All right, duties of finance director. How's that?
Seems,
Actually, director of finance.
Director of Finance.
Okay,
Exactly.
duties of director of finance. Hey, Dean, I don't do your job. Is there anything in there that's problematic to you? Or should be added or taken out? Cool. Well, let's change the title. then.
So I have a question on this one. So otherwise, like, or in other places, we have made notation back to state laws. So is there any state laws about accounting, city government accounting or whatever?
I'm going to defer to Dean on that one.
I
think they're-
actually looked, because it wasn't so much accounting, but it says in here, all of those which shall be vested in city auditors by general law, to see, okay, what does the revised code say about auditors? And it doesn't really get into the accounting of accounts to any great extent, but it, you know, most statutory entities have an elected auditor, an elected treasurer, kind of like counties. And, you know, they get into the roles. It's very generic, kind of like this, but it says in general that the auditor shall this, that, whatever else. But there really wasn't anything in that was any whole lot different than this. So
Okay.
there may have been at one point in time, who knows when, but
are you okay with 86, Dean? Do
Mhm.
you want us to say you get to wear a crown or
I don't know, we can, that's.
you have oriental rug in your office?
Yeah.
I think a better title would be cooler than that crown
All right, 87, accounts and
Commandant.
procedure.
of numbers. Commissar of figures. Money master.
I don't have any changes on
Are you okay with it, Dean?
Yes, and just in general, again, but recognizing this
We could
is,
put accounts and procedure generally,
Yeah.
if you'd like it. at
that
the
would
top.
make it better, that kind of gives you the
Accounts
out.
generally.
And procedure.
I've not worked in government too long. You always want that, you know, that out just in case. But, you know, this is 1940s, 1950s language, and, you know, didn't contemplate internet and different things like that, how things occur and electronic funds. But to go in and try to rewrite all this, I think you're getting beyond just commas and punctuation, and I don't know.
He's where we were the first day. Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, probably the first day you got to ask yourself, you got to vote on it.
And no matter the method that you do it, this is still how you do it. Right. This is still what you do. If you do it electronically or with trained monkeys. This is still what you do.
Yeah,
Right,
Dean, to
but
catch you up on what
A
we've
lot of the
done.
notions about accounts kept in, it really doesn't apply to any great extent, but it's not like we're in violation of it, but
Yeah, we've taken out a lot of the references to books and journals and paper printing things. I'm reading this, it seems like you can do this digitally and all that stuff and meet it with what you're doing now, I hope.
Taking out reference to books has killed my soul, but I've moved on. Are we okay with 87?
Mhm.
Yes.
88, appropriation accounts.
Dean, do we do warrants drawn on the treasury? Is that what we do?
Just out of curiosity, I might know what a warrant drawn on the treasury is.
That's why I asked.
No.
Yeah. Yeah, that's like if it's gonna cost $30 million to build the road, you have a $30 million warrant on the treasury, but it's not the actual, the road could come in at $20 million and you don't have to spend the next, because it's just a warrant, right?
Actually, a warrant is actually more commonly referred to as a check nowadays, or maybe an electronic payment.
I was close.
A purchase order
You were
is,
very close.
that's not bad. And a purchase order and encumbrance is where you're setting, you don't
Wow.
necessarily spending anything. But some people, old school, language state, a warrant is commonly referred to as a check. So yes, we keep track of the checks we write.
And we learned something.
So we're okay with warrant, even though it's kind of a weird word, it makes sense.
It's in the
Works.
state code still. It's
Okay.
cool. It's weird, but
Any other comments about 88? Let's move to 89, monthly statement, financial statement and other reports. Again, Dean, this kind of goes back to what you do. Anything in there that you feel like we should change?
As long as there's no penalty clause if I don't get it to council by the 10th of each month. I didn't see any. I've never seen it in the past, so as long as we don't put a penalty in it, subject to whatever. But yes, I do an annual monthly report to city council.
is it worth, and I don't want to volunteer to help you out here, Dean, but is it worth striking out by the 10th day of each month? I mean, if that's not the reality, when you get the numbers in and you can't actually do that, because I know we do them at council
We
meetings,
always do it
but
on the first council meeting.
so I guess it is
For
by
the
the
second,
10th.
but sometimes it just depends on when the end of the year, we don't get the month closed out till, if there's issues that come up, sometimes it might be the 7th of the month and whatnot. So the 10th is kind of, I would say, if you would say monthly.
If it's incorrect, we should take it out and change it to something that's more appropriate, like the first council meeting or what have you.
Yeah, I'm going to change this to some sort of monthly thing. I'll work with you, Dean, on that. I just think I'd rather have it not get you in trouble
Yeah,
over 2 days when it doesn't really matter that much, so.
things like that can come back and surprise you.
Dean, is there a date that you would put out there? Like if you were changing 10 to, do you want it by day or you want it by council meeting? What would you
We
prefer?
could say the second council meeting, but, or you could just say monthly.
I don't like the attachment to dates because that ends up, on whenever you attach it to a date, then you fall into, if it falls on a weekend on a Saturday, will it be turned in on the Friday before or the Monday after? And then that just opens a whole new can of worms with semantics. So if you just say second council meeting or monthly,
I just want to make sure it's something that he can meet.
Right. I mean, I think if we do it monthly, it's got to happen during the month. Is there any reason, I guess I'll defer to Carolyn and maybe Mary Jane have been on council, why you would be ticked off if it happened a little later in the second meeting or anything?
No, I think telling you they need to see it monthly
Yeah, let's go monthly.
makes sense.
Just clarify again, because in the middle, it says such a report shall be in such form and detail as director of finance shall determine, we have automated, our accounting system is computerized, and I can generate a report probably by the 10th because we close out, but submitting that to city council is not going to be worth their time to look at. I try in my monthly report to come in and summarize and provide narrative, and it just takes time to go through, and that's where that 10th becomes problematic.
Let's just call it monthly, and if they get ticked off, they can describe by ordinance what they want and say we want it, whatever, so. Cool, that's a good change. Not really excited about number 90, that's kind of a sad.
Are you?
On the death, resignation, or removal, or expiration of the term.
Well, everybody's got to go. 22 years, he said.
Y'all need to read that, but this is kind of something that's,
Yeah,
I'm not
okay.
sure it's real clear and whether we do it. If you read that first sentence, it says, upon the death, resignation, removal, or expiration of the term of any officer of the city, the director of finance shall cause an audit. So there's two important words in there to understand what's an officer of the city.
That's right.
And what is an audit.
And what's the term? Because I don't think any of us have terms, except for maybe council, but they're not really officers. That's weird. Do you do any of this, Dean? It seems kind of weird.
Again, I don't.
I mean, no one's, yeah.
But you're
But I
subjected,
do because we monitor
the
it.
city's subjected to audits.
Well, yes,
by
we do-
state,
we
right?
do have an audit. That's why I said it's imperative for people to understand what an audit is. Most people outside the accounting business call a lot of things an audit, but it's not really. You're just reviewing things. An audit when you go and you issue a statement as far as the accuracy and whatever else. But again, it's an old time type of thing. Back in the day when, the police chief maybe was collecting dimes and nickels in his department, things are centralized and we review and monitor everything that's going on. Most of our departments don't have funds that I'm aware of, other than the coffee or whatever can, whatever. Money's there that doesn't go through our processes. So, and back in the old days, they probably did. So
I'd probably,
it's somewhat problematic because it's there. I don't know how I would interpret that.
I would almost recommend just crossing it out, because if we're not doing our job all along and, I leave, first of all, I don't have any accounts to audit, but if you don't know I've screwed something up when I hopefully don't die, I don't think this is really going to.
Well, I think you can take that line out, because leaving it in means you need to be doing it.
Yeah.
And the next sentence kind of allows an examination if you really have
Yeah, that's
an
fine.
idea or you suspect a misuse.
So far, I'm going to strike the first, man, this sentence is long. Oh, shoot. Okay, I'll leave that. So I'm going to price the first sentence. I'm going to leave the second sentence, which doesn't really cause any problems. I feel like we might want to, Dean, do you think we need to do an audit if you were to?
Well, that's a different issue, and I
Yeah.
think there's some compelling reasons, but as Mary Jane said, we have an annual, back in the day, they didn't have so many independent at all every 2 years. So we have an annual audit that's done every year. It's pretty comprehensive. Again, it's been a long time since we've had a transition in the office per se, but ironically, when I came here, I read that and I said, okay, even from my standpoint, coming in as a new finance director, okay, what am I inheriting here? What am I responsible for or not responsible for? Should there be separate from our annual audit, which there's purposes for that, to make sure our financial statements are accurate. Our financial statements could be accurate, but there could be all kind of irregularities in how and what we do. But they also do compliance testing to make sure we follow the laws and all that sort of stuff. Is this inferring to make sure that, part of their audit is to test our internal controls, and to, although they'll write an out that says we're not responsible for detecting fraud or anything like that. If it comes up, we'll communicate it. But there is a certain amount of oversight from that standpoint. But if this is intended to be, no, we want something more specific, we may call it an audit, but in essence, it's have somebody independent of the city come in, not do an annual audit like you would do for financial statement purposes, but come in and make sure that monies are properly accounted for, and we know what's there, and the finance director didn't empty a bank account on his way out of town or anything like that. It wasn't done before I came here, so, and I don't know when I may be leaving, but that there is something to be said for that, whether I'm coming or going, that there might be some, I just don't know if there's a better way to quantify what it is that should be done.
Is there any need to even address the idea that if somebody, a department head, I don't like the idea of the word officer, but they leave, is there some need for you as director of finance to go and make sure the accounts are in order?
None of our departments handle any accounts.
That's what I thought.
Right, so that's not there. If I were concerned that the police chief, it'd be more physical assets of the city, that whatever happened to that, whatever we bought here. I mean, once we buy it, pay for it, it's properly paid for. I don't know, maybe that, but it's never been something that's raised to an occasion of, we need to really maybe check a few things.
Well, I think that the door is is open to just make sure that you're detecting if there was any fraud.
I have a question.
So I don't know where the door is open for somebody to commit fraud.
I have a question about whether we remove that first sentence.
Okay.
whether- I'm sorry?
Okay.
About if we remove this, the part about audits at the beginning, whether to the person who's voting on this, it's the same question we've come up with every meeting. If it's not doing any harm as written, and then we remove something about we're going to do audits on officers after they've left office to the voter, does that seem like we're removing some controls?
Well, we're out of compliance. So if you leave it in the charter, we're out of compliance right now, because we don't do it.
Well, you can always become in compliance, or we could adjust this, but maybe it's better not to just take it out entirely.
Right, if they're out of compliance, then that's an issue for the city manager up to council. to
I was
correct.
wondering if there's any way to fold something that's in section 90 that we feel is important back into the duties generally of director. I mean, is there something in there that's important enough for us to say, oh yes, and the director of finance also has to, whatever we feel is important out of 90, can we fold that back into 86 under the duties of the finance director?
That would make sense. I also wonder if maybe.
I'm not sure what it is. I mean, if you have an audit every year, it's by law. Should there be something that recognizes that fact, that you oversee the audit or something?
Well, that probably came about after this charter, the requirement that the city, and it's in state law, but if you had a charter provision that says the city shall have an annual audit done, you perhaps could then explain why this is no longer relative. But again, I get down to terminology. I can tell you from my standpoint, I would have very much problematic. I'd go to the city attorney, because to me, an audit, I'm a CPA, and for me to do an audit, I mean, I've got requirements of that CPA license. I can't just say I've done an audit. That means something pretty important. It means that I've gone in and verified, and I'm putting whatever else, putting my name, CPA, behind that I've audited that. I don't even know what that audit would constitute, because it's not telling me what to audit.
So an audit as defined by the.
But if we were to just change, but there again, it becomes a change. And how do you explain a change? My personal thing is that if you change it to cause a review, doesn't mean a whole lot to some people. Maybe the difference between an audit and a review, but that just means you're going in, which I do on an ongoing basis. And then the other thing is, what is an officer of the city?
We've talked about that several times.
Yeah, we don't know. Dean, so let's pretend, for the sake of argument, I was going to come back with a proposed draft that might not get approved. And I did strike the first line. I kept the second line, but tweaked it a little bit so it's a little bit better about how we can do an audit. And then on the third line about your death, resignation, or removal, is there a word that's better than audit? And I don't think it's his or her accounts. I mean, it's going to be of the what? The books? How can I tighten that up?
But that should definitely be an audit.
Is that one an
But
audit?
who should do this audit? I
I
mean,
would
if he's
think that if-
leaving office, why would we want him to do the audit? If we fire him, who's going to do this audit?
I
Well,
don't
it
think
says that.
would be me, it would be
He says-
somebody.
It
The
needs to be.
city manager can appoint
outside,
somebody
yeah.
to do the audit. It won't.
You
it
kept
wouldn't-
talking about
yeah.
doing a review and audit. It can't be you.
No, I'm talking about auditing other officers, because it says
But
I'm
no other
supposed to
office.
I'm supposed to audit other officers.
No other office could, has any money anymore.
Yeah, I want to take that out if I can,
Yeah.
but we'll have to put some other stuff in here so it looks good. But Dean, do you agree that if you die or leave or retire, we should do an audit, kind of transition to the next mini Dean?
I think maybe for suggestive purposes, because I think you need to be clear on what that is a little bit. Maybe we reach out, and because what would turn around, what more than likely happens, is we'd go contract with some CPA firm.
Yep.
And they're going to look at that, because I was working CPA and saying, okay, I need a little bit more clarity what you want done. You want me to audit the financial statements? Because that's going to cost you $60,000. Do you want me to audit, what do you mean, what do you want me to audit? And the accounts, I just know it's going to be very problematic to get anybody to do this work. And it's going to be expensive to a certain extent. But the notion that most people see is that, especially with that priest, he's had responsibility for a lot of the money.
Right.
We don't know where it's at. Who knows? It's maybe hidden somewhere. How do we come in there and make sure that things are up to proper form? Maybe we can talk to some people externally in that profession to say,
Yeah.
here would be a better way to, if you said this and you contacted us, we could
What
put
would that
together a
mean
scope
to
of
you? Yeah.
services and accomplish that.
Okay.
The problem is,
think it-
especially if there's a death or whatever else, it just, you hate to be in that situation where they're turning around recruiting to fill the position, and when does it occur and how and what, to what extent, and so we need to probably clear, but I definitely sense there should be some,
I think there should be
there
something.
should be. I would have preferred it coming into the job before I came in there, and I would expect it, after I would leave the job, whether I get fired or die or whatever.
Or retire in a nice amicable manner. What I would request, because we have 1 week to our next meeting, this one might be one that requires a little bit more work, so I might not have it ready, but I think we kind of have some general direction of where we want to go. And if I'm a miracle, I get it done, great. But if not, if you could maybe give me 2 meetings to get that one done.
When I'm looking at this, the only definition of the audit would be in that third to last line where it says just establishing whether the employer or officer is indebted to the city. I don't know if that limits it enough to say that's how the audit should be done or not, but that's obviously what they're looking for, is whether someone's got
Still
money
money.
or not.
Yeah, and there are lots of different loopholes and ways, so the ambiguity is a way to leave it open.
It's weird. Dean, never leave us.
Actually, I'm sure that this is kosher. This is why I'm not an attorney. But I wondered if, at the beginning of the first sentence, if we were to add when deemed necessary or appropriate by the city manager or city council, something like that.
That's not inappropriate.
Because that would get him out of the fact that he's really not needing to do this, and leave it in there so that the voters wouldn't have to question why it's coming out.
No, that's actually very creative and kind of genius, actually.
Well, maybe I should have been an attorney.
So if you left that first
It's kind of
sentence in there
Jesus
with
from
that
the-
qualifier
Right.
or that condition, then it wouldn't look to the public like we're saying, oh, we're not doing any audits.
You've given us a lot to work with. I really like that last one. I'm hoping David kept good notes because I crossed stuff, I recircled it, I crossed it. So we're going to have to work together on this one.
Okay.
David, do you have enough to help me out on this one?
Well, we'll expect that back on,
Monday.
If you write down the time, you can always bring up the recording.
I'll have it therefore and forthwith.
So like, you can bring up the time, so at like 7:33, you can pull it up and read it again.
All right, we'll let you all work on
Never
that,
wanna do that
and
again.
Dean, we want you to make sure that that makes sense too, and make it doable. We don't want to put in here something that no accounting firm could possibly do for us
Yeah.
at a reasonable cost. So let's move to section 91, the administration of treasury, monies paid into the treasury, deposit of city money.
Monies is misspelled.
What is?
Monies is misspelled in the title. It's MONIES.
It's misspelled all the way through.
Wow. Maybe that's some sort of old school, like
Yeah.
Victorian England.
Archaic.
Now, I'll tell you what's archaic is recordation on the next page.
Do you want me to change monies to monies?
You might want to check, Darren, because I think there's something to be said. Usually people back in the 50s were pretty good at penmanship and spelling and all that. And maybe, monies and what we think monies means, was money, is it funds, is it whatever else? That's pretty obvious in a heading of a title. Somebody back then would have recognized that monies is spelled MONIES or whatever, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's not an alternate
reason.
A lot of
definition.
other errors that we
I don't think, you can do some research to see if it makes a difference, but I don't think it does.
I'm going to ask my new best friend, David Mosier, to do some research before our next meeting. She got it?
Monies is fine. It's just-
I had a question about, it shall be paid without delay into the city treasury. Do we have a treasury?
What do you mean by a treasury?
Well, I mean, treasuries,
somewhere?
it seems like it should be put into the city's bank accounts.
Well, that's what they
It
mean
is
by
a treasury.
treasury, but it's,
Treasury kind of feels like a building somewhere.
yeah. Again, like I said, a lot of this is older language.
I'm
and
fine
how
with it. I just thought it was kind of a weird thing.
It's actually in Dean's closet.
It means what?
The treasury's in Dean's closet.
Okay.
And it won't be
You ought to
long,
need an
within 10
audit.
years, we won't even have money. It'll be electronic, whatever.
Bitcoin.
Yeah, it's not even real money most of the time.
All finance shall be converted to Bitcoin and kept in your Yahoo account.
I think by treasury, they mean because some of those funds may be invested and in
Right,
treasury.
I know
is a
what you
general
mean.
term for, not just kept
The
in a drawer
accumulated
somewhere.
funds, okay. So you're going to find out something about monies for us? Or
David has done
David
a little
will?
initial research, but he thinks it's
All
okay
right.
so far, but we'll do
So
more.
what's the
It's-
best practice? Are we using modern English or past because English like morphs?
Well,
I don't think we've made that determination.
I'm looking at style book, and I'm just looking at a brief Google. Garner's Modern American Usage and the AP Style Book suggest that EYS is the better spelling, but that's not what you find publications using to go look. So IES is the more modern usage,
Yes.
but EYS is
So it's a best practice.
according to the style books. Yes.
Style books like EYS. I would say my general thought on monies versus monies is where we found stuff where it was in something else we were changing, it was going to change, but since this would be the only change here, I don't know if we want to mess with it.
I'm fine with it.
Kind of looks cool.
You all okay with
Yes.
the accepted?
Leave it.
You okay with that, Dan?
Yep.
All right, 92. Anything else on 91?
Never want to read it
92,
again.
safekeeping of securities.
Dean, is that somewhat accurate?
Yeah, physical
It's like
securities
100 years
anymore?
old, but
Yeah.
I don't maintain any vaults or anything like that. Even anything we do now is electronic. We borrow money. We don't sign. There's not people, even the investors don't get their little tear-off tickets. It's all done electronically.
Can't we just end that sentence after Director of Finance? Can be
Is it fair
recorded?
to say you record them, Dean? I mean, you have a paper
Of
with
course,
them?
yeah, we have to
Yes.
record it.
That's a good idea.
Well, then I would just get rid of it. Yeah, I agree with that suggestion. Cross it out after finance.
So we don't have a vault where you keep everything.
Where is this?
Darn it.
involved?
In some safe deposit vault. It's some.
Yeah, just somewhere.
Just put it in some vault.
Closet somewhere.
Real quick,
Or in
ironically,
Dean's garage.
we got a call a couple weeks ago from PNC Bank. They had, city had this vault, these safe deposit vault, two of them, for a long, long, long time. I can't even tell when. We've never had to pay for it, so it's never come. They gave it to us free. And, the city, now you're gonna have to start paying for it because there's no free ride anymore with the banks. But we had to dig down into wherever else, and we found two old safe deposits way before my time. So we were gonna schedule kind of a Geraldo Rivera open the
Oh,
vault.
yeah. Al Capone kind of
Thinking,
thing.
oh, there might be some documents from the
What's
the
in there?
1800s in there, but there wasn't.
Oh, well, I was kind of anticlimactic. I was like,
Yeah.
do we own like half the country?
So we'll take out reference to the vault.
Yes. Go bad.
93, preparation and certification of special assessments. I assume that's pretty much what you do.
Yes, what we do, not always what I do, but it's done at the city level.
So it's okay.
And we do certify assessments through my office to the county auditor.
Oh, I know, I had a question, but you don't need a safe deposit box, but do you use like a bank lockbox like the county does? I mean, does money ever transfer to the city in or out through a bank,
Through a bank?
through a lockbox at a bank?
What do you mean by lockbox?
I'm not using the right word for
Yes,
it,
you
but
are.
that?
The part of the function of the bank that opens the check, deposits it in your account, and sends you all the backup.
We don't, there's a service that banks offer where they'll open your mail for a fee and do all that sort of stuff. And no, we don't. We've explored that many, many different times, but there's really no.
the county uses that like for capital projects.
Normally,
There's actually a fee they pay. They use Delaware County Bank.
if I'm following what you're saying, where it's come up in us is like with our utility bills, that instead of people mailing them to the city and going into our mailbox, they go to the bank. The bank opens 8,000 envelopes a month, and they take the checks out of them and they deposit it into our account. So arguably, we get it into our bank account quicker. But it's just not germane because we, the cost to do that is the cost of two people down in a department. It only takes one person, 10 hours a month to do that. And so the costs are way
we don't have
high.
money opened anywhere else.
Right. Plus, we can take those checks and scan them. We got a scanner and it gets right into our account electronically right away.
Okay.
Is that okay? You good, Charlotte?
Good.
Okay, 94. This talks about things that council can ask the director of finance to do.
By ordinance.
by ordinance.
Seems reasonable to me.
I didn't see any problem with that. Did anybody else?
Nope.
Nope.
Okay. 95, recordation. That was a weird word.
I looked at.
Of bonds and notes. Recordation. I just thought recording.
It sounds much more
Weird word.
formal though, doesn't
Isn't
it?
that a weird word?
Adding Asian at the end makes everything official.
You know, some attorney charged them extra for that word.
I'm sure.
You had recording, but for $15, I can change it to recordation.
Now, what I can say is that doesn't happen to that extent anymore. There perhaps was a time when people had municipal bond coupons, and literally you had their bearer bond. You had to bring them to the bank and get your interest payment every twice a year. That went way down long 2 years ago. When we issue bonds, it's all done electronically now. Tom and I will have to sign the big bond that might be the the $2 million portion of it. But individually, those things get traded, sold on the open market constantly. I don't know who owns those bonds. And it's not, we pay an entity to process that and handle that. So once we issue that debt, receive those proceeds and sign, do the closing, it really doesn't come in. We pay our debt service payment to a third party, to a paying agent, and they handle through electronic means who the holders of the bonds are. So, but back in the day, there literally was, when I came here, we still had some of those coupons that people would come in and they'd bring them in. But
So we probably should delete this one
yeah,
because
it
it's
no
going to
longer
screw
functions
somebody
that
up.
way.
And there's no benefit to us to having this in there because literally it's just in my Scottrade account or whatever. I don't have any bond or anything.
I have
so.
no idea who the purchasers of our bonds, and that changes every day.
I would suggest we just delete 95 then since it's so far from reality and actually hurts people who might have a bond. So
Okay. Anybody have a problem with that?
no, I don't think-
96, which is the interest and earnings belonging to the bond retirement fund. That seems pretty straightforward. All right. My suggestion is to go through Article 19 because it's pretty easy.
Yeah.
And then, I don't know about going through 20. I didn't have any problem with anything in 20 either, but you all may. And then we will have fulfilled our agenda obligation.
Which is pretty
Are you
amazing.
okay for another maybe 15 minutes?
Yes.
It might not even take that long to be honest.
I have to leave at 10 up.
So Article 19 deals with public health.
I don't know if we do this anymore, but
Well, the one, I thought we didn't either, but then I read that nothing in the charter shall be construed to prevent any combination of the city health district of the city of Delaware with any other health district. So I kind of thought,
we're fine. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, that kind of says, we're going to have a city health district, but they could become a county health district, or they could become
Because I think we
Broward
have
County,
the,
Delaware County Health
I
District.
think it's actually called the Combined Health District,
Yeah,
which, so maybe we're fine just leaving it. It's been taken care of.
I think the next section means that if we ever did, and some cities do, we could, I think, elect to not be a part of the Delaware
Right.
County Health. And we pay money to them for them to do that, but the next section says we reserve the right to form
Right.
our own health district.
Yeah, so maybe we don't have to mess with this one.
so are you okay with 97, 98, the way they're written?
Yes.
Article 20, civil service. Talks about the merit system.
To do this one without Jack being here.
Yeah, we really need Jack here. He's been in
Yeah.
civil service forever.
You know, I don't think there's going to be a ton of changes. It probably would be valuable to have our unique resource, which would be Jack, here for that. See, Dan, I don't think this would push us back too far if we made
No, I
that.
think we'll wait for Jack.
It was his dad.
Yeah. You said that when he's not here, of course.
Right.
So
Okay,
let's
so-
put that aside. It'll probably be fast, but I would like to have it here for that.
All right.
So let's
that's-
set homework.
That takes us to 21, which is city planning, zoning, and plating. And so,
Does anybody have anything with
Jack says
those?
We were going to 20, but this one says.
Say
"Time
again?
permitting."
If we want, yeah, we don't have to. It's if we want to get excited.
Well, I don't want to lose Stephanie. I mean, I don't want to start and then lose Stephanie if it's something we can,
Stop at.
if it's not
She's
that
got to leave in 5
involved
minutes.
and we can do it next time.
You mean on plating and zoning?
Let's, I don't think there's going to be a lot there, but, it's kind of got a lot of different sections, so
I
maybe we
haven't
just,
read it.
let's just not do it then. Let's stop. Let's set homework then.
My homework was to the 20. That's what I read.
You're good.
I'm hearing a lot of We're going home.
Well, we're going to go
next-
home, but we're going to set homework for next time, and it's only going to be a week from now, so what do you think's reasonable, guys?
I was wondering if we could do, well, we're going to go back and do 19, or 20.
Right.
Pretty quick. So we would do 20, 21, and 22 is city elections.
The nice thing is, I thought we had a lot left to go, but we actually are doing okay.
Do we want to go through elections? To Article 23, or do you want to do more?
I don't want to make that decision, I'll just read it until home. Whoever tells me to stop.
We're pretty, you know what, we could try to go to the end.
I would almost say if you're okay reading to the end.
It's only Article 25.
Yeah, and they're not that much. I don't really think I've identified any meaty stuff. So if we read to the end, we'll just agree that if we don't get that far,
That's
we'll
right.
stop when we have to go. But that way, if we're cruising, we might be able to wrap up.
So if you did your homework correctly for tonight, you only have to start, you can start with 21.
Right.
21 through the end of the charter, which is 25. Is that what you said?
Yeah, I'm not going to Roman numerals, but I think that's right.
Nice.
Yeah.
And then what I'll do is, since we might have some changes, even if we get done next meeting, we'll probably have to have one more meeting because I'm going to take all of our changes that we've agreed to, bring them back, and we'll vote on this package that we've all agreed on. And we also probably won't get done with some of these weird ones that might not get done next week. So we'll definitely have another meeting after next week, but we might be able to kind of get.
When is there one after next week? Do you remember?
June 9th, I think.
June 9th?
Yeah, it's,
And then there was one on June 23rd, I think.
Yeah.
I think it's
Schedule.
June 9th because the next 2 weeks, well, 3 weeks I'm in Europe.
I believe the 23rd meeting was problematic for a lot of,
The 23rd is problematic
Yes,
for
for me
me.
as well. I'll be in school.
and there's a decent chance we'll be done by then. If we can get through everything next week, I could bring everything back, and on that June 9th meeting, we might actually be able to vote and be done. If we can't get done, we'll just try to poll everybody with a date that works instead of that 23rd, because I know a lot of people couldn't make the 23rd meeting.
We're going to go to Turkey. That's so important.
Awesome.
Kind of disappointed in that. I was looking for.
Oh, I guess
But
we're
we got to
going to,
adjourn.
Mary Jane's got to adjourn us. I guess.
So the next meeting is May 29th. Your homework is from 21.
Wait,
May
May
19th.
19th.
What did I say?
By now.
Oh, yeah, May 19th.
We're talking about.
Yeah, I'm going to be in somewhere on the 29th. It's not here. May 19th, which is next Thursday at 6 o'clock, and we will be looking at Articles 20 through the end of the charter. Hopefully, we can get through that. And may I please have a motion to adjourn?
Some of
And a second. All those opposed? We are adjourned.
Good meeting again, guys. This has been fun.
Did anyone ask you?
Okay, David, I'm going to need your GoPro. That the jacked up one. I have so
I want to
many.
know why our meeting wasn't on the city's rolling things and meetings downstairs.
Was it not?
I raised my hand like.
The outpouring of,
No wonder we get no city, no public.
I know.
No meetings
we
are.
try to hide from you.